Participant Leo argues for a smaller, efficiency-focused state. Max argues for a larger, capacity-building state. Leo. Let's begin with the basic growth math. When the public sector takes a larger share of GDP, you generally get more distortionary taxation and more current spending that doesn't raise productivity. Cross-country work has found that government consumption correlates negatively with long-run growth. Add deadweight losses, avoidance, and compliance costs, and you see why lean and focused tends to win over big and busy. Max. And I'll start with basic stabilization and capacity. Economies with bigger automatic stabilizers suffer less violent booms and busts. In downturns, fiscal multipliers are larger. Public spending props up demand when private demand collapses. That's not theoretical, it shows up in the data. A state that can tax and invest competently is a precondition for markets that function well. Leo. Stabilization isn't a blank check. Much so-called stimulus is low-quality current outlay. If you finance that with higher marginal tax rates, you compound the problem: more labor-leisure distortion, more gaming, more compliance burden. The state should do less but better: enforce contracts, provide core public goods, keep taxes broad and low, and crowd in private enterprise rather than crowding it out. Max. Do less but better is a nice slogan, implementation is the trick. Many societies underinvest in public capital, transport, digital infrastructure, energy grids, basic research. Those are classic high spillover goods the private sector undersupplies. Done well, public investment raises output in the short run and builds capacity for the long run. You don't get semiconductor fabs or resilient grids by trimming the state to the bone. Leo. There's a difference between public investment and chronic expansion of the welfare state or administrative layers. I support rigorous, high-return investment with real cost-benefit analysis and independent oversight. I don't support permanent ratchets in baseline spending that bake in inefficiency. Governments are bad at stopping. Programs accrete constituencies and never die. Max. The right cure for program bloat is governance reform, not austerity as a theory of everything. You can build sunset clauses, performance audits, and clawbacks into statutes. Meanwhile, social insurance and transfers aren't mere frills. They reduce inequality and stabilize household balance sheets, which supports human capital and social cohesion. That pays growth dividends too. Leo. Transfers can reduce measured inequality, but growth matters for the pie. If the tax wedge grows, you shrink labor supply and investment at the margin. And the public sector often crowds out private solutions. For every success story, there are white elephant projects and administrative thickets that deter entrepreneurship. The unseen counterfactual is the business not started. Max. There are white elephants in the private sector too. The question is who is better placed to deliver certain goods. Early-stage basic research? Epidemic preparedness? National networks with network effects? That's a state job, or at least a state-steered job. And let's not forget volatility. Smaller governments leave households exposed, which amplifies recessions. Bigger stabilizers mean fewer scarring effects and faster recoveries. Leo. I'll concede the cyclical case. Counter-cyclical fiscal policy can help when monetary policy is constrained. But that doesn't justify a permanently larger state. Build targeted, temporary instruments that switch on in recessions and off in expansions. Don't use downturns as an excuse for permanent expansions in unrelated programs. Max. Agreed on cyclicality. Automatic triggers are better than discretionary politics. Yet even outside recessions, legal and fiscal capacity matter. Countries that invested in reliable courts, professional tax administrations, and infrastructure became wealthier. That's big, in a qualitative sense. Capable, not merely large. Sometimes capacity requires scale. Leo. Capacity can be built without expanding redistribution. Focus on rule of law, regulatory quality, competitive neutrality, and lean tax systems. When the state tries to do too much, it does many things poorly. Scarcity of administrative talent is real, concentrated on the essentials. Max. Essentials include human essentials. Health, education, housing supports, done right, raise effective labor supply and productivity. If children grow up in deprivation, you get lower skills and weaker growth decades later. It's penny wise, pound foolish to fetishize smallness and ignore those externalities. Leo. Then let's specify, done right. Means tested, time-limited supports with strong work incentives, transparent procurement, independent evaluation with randomized pilots, and a willingness to shut down programs that fail. In return, trim low-return current spending and cut high distortion taxes. We can both have investment and growth. Max. That's close to my position. My objection is to the reflex that small equals good. The evidence says composition and context dominate. In recessions, bigger fiscal moves work better. In booms, tax and spend less. Productive investment and state capacity exhibit returns. Waste and poor design don't. The right metric is outcomes, not size. Leo. So we converge. Prioritize high-return public investment, protect core state functions, and keep the tax system simple and pro-growth. Use automatic stabilizers to smooth cycles but avoid permanent bloat. Measure everything. Output volatility, private investment response, project IRRs, inequality, and effective marginal tax rates. Max. And publish the scoreboards. If transfers reduce inequality without killing incentives, keep them. If a project underdelivers, scrap it. If a tax preference distorts behavior without social payoff, remove it. A capable state can be disciplined as well as ambitious. Leo. Final concern, political economy. Once expanded, programs rarely shrink. We need credible binding rules, expenditure ceilings, pay-as-you-go, sunset reviews, to resist drift. Without them, good intentions inflate into chronic deficits and slower trend growth. Max. Political economy cuts both ways, under-provision happens too. That's why I like automaticity. Stabilization that turns on-off by formula, investment rules that gate projects through transparent CBA, and independent fiscal councils. Build institutions that help politicians do the right thing even when it's hard. Leo. Then maybe the real debate isn't small versus big, but weak versus strong institutions. A smaller state with weak institutions underperforms. A larger state with weak institutions also underperforms. Strong institutions plus disciplined scope get you the mix we're both groping toward. Max. Exactly. Let's retire the cartoon arguments and implement a portfolio. Capable courts and tax admin. Cyclical stabilizers. Targeted transfers with work incentives. Aggressive, well-governed public investment, and a tax code that funds it with minimal distortion. Call it smart government, not big or small. Leo. Works for me, as long as smart includes exit ramps for what doesn't work. Max. Deal. Evidence, accountability, and agility. That's a government sized to its tasks, and worthy of the society it serves.